here to sugarcoat love's already upon you. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, you, me, and you. Let's keep it real honest.
Hi everyone, it's been a little while here. I'm not sure, I haven't even checked. I think it's been like a month. But if you're new here, welcome to Real Honest. This is a podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and everything in between. I am your host, Samantha Labat, and you may not always like me, but I will always be honest with you. I publish new episodes every Wednesday at 6 a.m. Central Time, give or take, depending on what's going on in my life. Have not had time in the past month, which was awkward because my last episode was about depression. So thank you to everyone that reached out that thought I had stopped podcasting because I was sad. I was just busy. Well, I guess that's not entirely true. It is true that I was busy, but I also intentionally did not make time to record new episodes because I was going to say so many people, but that's not accurate either. 3 people have been consistently upset with me about multiple episodes. And so even though 3 is not a lot, like I get way more positive feedback than negative feedback, but I don't want to live in an echo chamber. I want to like intentionally listen to people, and I want to be a person that takes feedback. And I really did want to sit and evaluate, like, am I actually a bad person? And am I not as clear as I think I am? Am I rude? Am I terrible? Or in the words of Taylor Swift, am I bad or mad or wise? Yeah, just wanted to take some time to really be cognizant of like why I'm here and what I'm saying, and do some self-reflection on that to make sure that I feel aligned with good intentions. So today I want to talk about communication and assumptions, which I think I've already done 3 episodes on assumptions. Maybe I should change the podcast title from Real Honest to Assumptions, because I guess that's just going to be, we're just going to talk about it a lot because it keeps coming up. And I want everyone to be able to communicate as clearly and as effectively as possible. So that's where we're going today. So previously we've talked about like, just stop making assumptions, like just stop doing it. And something that's come up for me a lot in the past month is that I don't think that a lot of people are aware of when they're making assumptions. So today I'm going to walk through some examples of like how to notice when an assumption is being made on both ends. And I'm going to preface this by saying, like, of course, I'm not any type of communication expert on anything. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I am also guilty of this. And a classic example is like on my birthday trip when I texted the girls and I said like, I'm in Tomorrowland. And because my message did not say, please come meet me, I want to see you and spend the day with you, they were just like, why are you texting me that you're in Tomorrowland? Where I thought that the rest of it was already asked by me inviting them on the trip, but like they didn't feel that way. So it's just like miscommunications happen when you think that you're on the same page and you're not. And that based on the relationship that you and the person that you're talking to have, you can make some assumptions. You get like, once you get to know people better, I think you have more of the ability to do that. And we'll talk about that kind of going forward as well. But so the first example that I'm going to give you is I was having a conversation with somebody and she was asking me how things are going with the dude that I loved last summer. And I had said to her, oh, you know what? They're going great. Like we had a whole fight last night over whether or not we can be friends. And like the very next thing she said was, Samantha, you should not have to convince somebody to be your friend. You are perfect and you are beautiful and you are fun. And if he can't see that, then like let him go, but you should not be begging him to be your friend. Now, I love that she loves me. I love that she got mad. I 1000% agree with this position. I don't think anyone should ever beg anyone for friendship or love or affection or attention or anything like that. However, her response shows that she made a lot of assumptions. Okay, so let's back up to the sentence that I said. I said, It's going great. We had a whole fight last night over whether or not we can be friends. So in that sentence, I do not say who was on team I want to be friends and who was on team I don't want to be friends. She assumed that he does not want to be friends and I do want to be friends. I also said we had a fight about whether or not we can be friends. That does not even explicitly state that the two sides were I want to be friends and I don't want to be friends. The statement was we had a fight about whether we can be friends, which implies that we may not have the ability to be friends. It's possible that we both want to be friends, but we can't. I do think it's a safe assumption to say that at least one of us wants to be friends, because if we both don't want to be friends, then there's nothing to argue about. It's like, all right, we're on the same team. We're not friends. So either way, it's like, she assumed that the fight was that I wanted to be friends and he didn't, and then like jumped in responding with her opinion over that happening. And then I was kind of confused because like that wasn't like, I was not begging him to be my friend. So I was like, thanks for loving me, but like this is totally irrelevant. So what would have been nice is if she had asked some follow-up questions. Like when I had said, we had this fight about whether or not we can be friends, if she was like, say more about that. Like, what do you mean? Like, what was his position? What was your position? You said you had a fight, not that you're currently in a fight. So like, what's going on there? Like, is it over? Did somebody win? Did you come to a conclusion? None of those questions were asked. And because none of those questions were asked, I felt like she wasn't interested in hearing any more details, which I have no way to know if that's true because I didn't ask her, right? So she's making assumptions about what happened, which is giving her preconceived notions about the other person that was in the conversation with me. She's never met him. She doesn't know him, but she thinks she has an opinion of him based on things that I have said. But her opinion of him is not only based off of things that I have said, it's based on how she interprets things that I have said about him. So that's another thing that I'm trying to do, is be really, really careful about what I say to who, because she probably walked away from this conversation with me feeling like this guy's such an asshole, like is just stringing my sister along and she's so in love with him and he won't even be her friend and she's just a sad puppy. Like, I don't know. Again, like now I'm putting words in her mouth. Like I'm making assumptions of what she walked away thinking, but either way, on both ends, like she could have asked more questions to clarify what I meant. And I should have said to her, like, I feel like you're just trying to like dismiss this and move on to the next thing. And if that's the case, like that's cool. Let's not talk about it. But you did ask me how things were going. So I feel like you wanted an update and then you're just like making this assumption and like running away with it. Another example that I have is I was talking to a different person who was trying to give me some like weight loss goals or help or tips, to which I was not receptive to. And I was very much like, I didn't ask you for this. Don't give me this. I don't want this. And this person responded, well, you mentioned on one of your podcast episodes that you can't lose weight. So that means that you've tried everything under the sun and you can't do it by yourself and you need help. So I'm trying to help you. And I'm just like, run that back. The sentence was, I can't lose weight. I did not give any details into what I had tried or not. I did not give any details into if I had tried anything on my own or if I had help. All of those are assumptions that you made from a single sentence. And then you ran away and took action, which really upset me because I wasn't asking you to do that. So again, maybe if you hear I can't lose weight and in your brain that means, oh my gosh, this person has really tried and they really need help, sit with that and think through that and notice that you're making assumptions and then ask them about the assumptions that you've made. Have you tried? What have you tried? Have you sought help? From who? Would you like me to help? Can I help? Like, that's going to get you more progress in that type of conversation. The next one is that a guy that I barely know, like, reached out and asked me if I think men and women should share their body count with each other when they're dating. Now, I find this to be an extremely inappropriate question. So I did my best to not immediately get mad at this guy. I was like, let me give him the benefit of the doubt. And I noticed that I was making assumptions, because what was going through my mind was like, this is another stupid man who probably watches too much porn and is obsessed with sex and is just out here texting women stupid questions because he's an idiot. Those were the assumptions that I made. So I was like, let me walk this back and let me ask him some questions. Because before he asked me the question, he had texted me and said, hey, can I ask you something? I really need your opinion. That sentence to me conveys some kind of importance. Like, because I don't see the purpose in asking somebody if you can ask them something, because first of all, that's already asking them something. And second, it's like, if you ask somebody something and they don't want to answer, they can always decline to answer. But just because you asked if you could ask, they can still decline after you ask the question. So to me, like, just saying like, hey, can I talk to you? I really need your advice on this. I'm thinking like, this has got to be something important. Like, this has got to be something that I'm considered an expert in, that I'm going to know, and like my opinion is valuable to this person or whatever it is. And then the question that follows is, do you think men and women should tell each other how many people they've slept with? Like, what? Like, I just was very, very confused, very, very confused. But I'm also sitting there thinking, like, personally, the only time I would text somebody and say like, hey, can I ask you something? Hey, can you talk? Is if I'm saying like, I need you right now. Like, but honestly, I wouldn't text that, because I would just call him. But okay, my mom does this. My mom will text me and she'll say, can you talk? And when my mom texts me and says, can you talk? She means, are you available right now for me to call you? And sometimes it's important and sometimes it's not, and she just wants to talk. But either way, like, that's what she means when she says that. So I was thinking like, maybe that's what he's doing, but it wasn't, because he still texted me the question. But for me, I'm just like, if I want to talk to you, I'm going to call you or I'm going to text you and ask you my question. And you're either going to answer and we're going to talk right then, or you're not, and we're going to talk later whenever you get back to me. But like, what difference does it make if you do it now or later? Like, if I actually need you now, I'm going to call, or I'm going to say, hey, I need you now. But either way, that's an assumption that I made, because that's what I do. And I think that's what most of us do, is that when we're listening to people talk, we're thinking about what we would mean if we said those words. And that's the lens that we're viewing it from, where we need to pause and view it from a different lens and say like, okay, this person just said XYZ, and if I were to say that, I would mean ABC, but maybe they mean GYK. I don't know. So anyway, I asked this person more questions, where instead of answering his question, I said, where is this question coming from? And he proceeded to respond to me, giving me his opinion on the topic of his answer of like, well, I think it's really important to be like open and honest with each other. And I don't want to date someone that I don't know everything about. And I think that men and women should share this number with each other. And I was like, okay, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, where is this question coming from? Like, were you on a date and you asked a woman how many people she has slept with and she got upset? And now you're crowdsourcing opinions to see if she's valid in being upset, or if you're valid and asking the question. Like, give me some more information here. Like, why are you asking me this? And then that time he answered it and kind of said like he had been a guest on some podcasts or something, and just the topic had come up, and like, I have a podcast and I talk about relationships and stuff too. And like, he was just curious. Okay. Now the question makes sense. Next time, lead with that. Because leading with, can I ask you something? I need your opinion, makes it, that gives the air of an urgency that's not there. But to say, hey, I've been on some podcasts. This topic has come up multiple times. You have a podcast about relationships. I'm curious your opinion. That would have been a better lead in to the conversation. And so I just found that it was an interesting experience because it was the first time in a while that I feel like I was at least being actively aware of my own assumptions to be able to kind of run it back and ask for what I needed. Granted, it did make the conversation significantly longer than it needed to be, where there was a lot of back and forth of me needing to understand why I was even being asked so that I could go from the pissed off that I was when I initially got the question to like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't mind talking about this with you. And you know, sometimes people they're gonna see the question, they're gonna get pissed off because of assumptions that they're making, and that's gonna end the conversation right then and there. You know, so just depending on either end, like how much do you want to talk to this person? How important is the conversation to have? Because it also has to do with like how well you know the person, where like people that you know really, really, really well, you can sometimes make assumptions, or I guess if you know them really well, I wouldn't necessarily call it an assumption. So like I have two friends that say pretty frequently, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. One of them is always referencing the fact that he is eating a lot of food in that moment. So he'll either send a picture of his food with a caption, I'm such a fatty, or oh my gosh, I'm so fat. Or he'll text me and say like, oh, I'm so fat. And I'll be like, what are you eating right now? Because I know that when he says that, he's just referring to like having a very large meal. Whereas I have a girlfriend who frequently will say, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. And she literally means like she has gained a lot of weight and she's disgusted with her body. And so I'm able to jump right in with either of them and have that conversation with them because I know what they mean. But this is because I've known them for a very long time, to where they each have said this to me multiple times, and I've had the context of why it was being said and what they meant by it, that I don't have to ask the extra questions of like, okay, what do you mean like physically fat, metaphorically? Like what are we talking about here? Like I don't have to spend the extra time getting that context and getting that information. And I think a lot of times you have to do that. Like when I'm at work, for example, I'm a project manager. So if a client comes to me and says, we need a PowerPoint, I can't just make them a PowerPoint. I have to ask like, what is the PowerPoint for? Who is giving the presentation? Who are they giving the presentation to? What is the content of the presentation? What is the purpose? How many words per slide? Like I have to have all of those details before I can hire the people to do the work and manage the project, because if I don't have it, then we are definitely going to deliver the wrong thing to the client. So it's really the same thing when you're talking to friends. Like if you don't have the context, if you don't have clarity, ask. But this is really difficult to do because a lot of people, we don't pause and think about the assumptions that we're making. We just make them and we just run with it. So like even in that first example that I gave with, the girl who was saying like, oh, you guys had a fight about whether or not you can be friends. Like, how dare he not want to be friends with you? Like, you're great and you should never beg anyone for this. And, like she thought that that's what I meant. And she ran with it. Like, it wasn't like she knew consciously that she had made an assumption and was wrong. And this also is going to come into play where like, if the person that you're talking to thinks that you guys are closer than you actually are, they might make more assumptions, or same on your part. Like, I make more assumptions with people that I know well, because if I know them well, then I can translate stuff and know what they mean. And it's definitely not easy to do. I just would challenge you guys to start trying to notice these in your conversations in the next couple weeks and see how that changes the conversations that you have. I especially think it's helpful where if you're talking to somebody and either you or the other person gets upset and then the person who's not upset is confused that the other person is upset. Usually that happens because there was some assumption made on somebody's part where there was a miscommunication of like somebody wasn't clear or somebody is perceiving something incorrectly, and that's what's causing that shift and that disconnect. So that's an example, not an example, that's a scenario to like pause and run it back and like ask some more clarifying questions. So another example I can give you is I was having a conversation with someone, and this friend mentioned to me, your religion means a lot to you. And he said this to me like 3 times in a week, and it really bothered me. It was like the 3rd time that he said your religion means a lot to you, I got mad at him. First of all, he texted it to me, so I was making an assumption of the tone, and I was reading it in like a sarcastic, derogatory manner, like, "Ugh, your religion means a lot to you." Have no idea if that's how he said it because he typed it and I didn't ask him. But it was really bothering me, and so I was sitting here like, why do I hate this sentence? Like, why is it pissed me off a little the first time he said it, and it's like increasingly upsetting me each time that he says it. And then I sat here and I was just thinking about it, and I was like, is my religion not important to me, or do I think it's a problem if religion is important to me? And what I realized is that I think that he and I mean different things when we say religion is important. So like personally, I do not find religion important. Religion to me is ritual, in the sense of like, I go to church every Sunday just because it's ritual without meaning. So religion to me is like people that say they are whatever religion because their parents raised them that way, but they've never like done any research or study to like decide on their own. I consider people religious when they're like very involved in their church, like just going through the motions in terms of like, I'm a good person and good people go to church every Sunday and they volunteer and they give to the poor, and that's all it is to them. To me, a relationship with God goes so much deeper than religion, and I don't consider myself a religious person, even though I go to church every Sunday and I'm very involved in my church. But I think the average Christian who is considered religious that goes to church every Sunday and maybe gets very involved, I think the average person does not read the Bible, does not have a personal relationship with God, doesn't pray, doesn't really understand how prayer works or the purpose. They're not like really doing the work to like get a relationship with God. And I don't want to be put into that camp because I think that I am very different. I also think that there's a negative connotation in general in America against people that are religious, where I feel like it kind of seems like, oh, those people are stupid. Like they think they're in a cult and they don't know, or they think that God's real and he's not. Like, oh, how cute, ha ha ha. Like it feels very like derogatory to me. I do not know that any of this resonates with my friend that told me my religion means a lot to me. I think he probably was looking at it as, he knows that I go to church. He knows that I volunteer at my church. He knows that I'm in seminary studying the Bible, and those to him are religious things, and that means that religion is important. He was not saying that my religion being important to me is a good or a bad thing. Like, he just was making an observation. It just was a statement, and I ran away with it and put all of this meaning behind it, and I essentially boiled it down to, he's telling me that I'm stupid and he doesn't respect me. And like, that's absolutely not what he said or what he meant. And so after I thought about it for a while, like, I did go back to him and say, like, it really bothers me. Like, you said this 3 times, like, the last week. It really bothers me. And like, here's why. Like, it's not a statement that I would make myself. Like, I actually don't agree that my religion means a lot to me. Like, I really don't even like the word religion or religious. Like, I don't want to be lumped in with like other Christians or other believers because I think that I am very different. And I think that when you group people like that, the assumption is like those people hate women's rights, those people hate the gays, and like those things are not true for me. So I like to be absolute sure that all my friends know like where I stand on social issues and where I stand with God and all of those different things. And he kind of just said like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I don't know. But it was important to me to clarify like what I thought he meant. And also for me to do the whole exercise with myself of like, this isn't what he meant. This isn't what he said. Like, I'm putting words in his mouth and that's not fair for me to do. So really, he didn't upset me. Like, I upset myself with my own assumptions and my own feelings because I didn't pause to ask clarifying questions. Now, I know that for a lot of people, this is very annoying and I sound crazy. Like, I was having a conversation with someone who asked me, do you think that you're beautiful? And I responded, what do you mean by beautiful? Define beautiful for me. And they got very annoyed and were like, what the hell? Why would you ask that? Like, do you think you're beautiful? Yes or no? It's just a question. Like, why do you have to like analyze every single word like this? And I said, because from what I know of you, I think that beautiful to you is skinny. And I think you're actually asking me, do I think that I'm skinny? And I have a different answer to that question than do I think that I'm beautiful? And she said, all right, well, what does beautiful mean to you? And I was like, to me, beautiful is more like, I think there's inner beauty and there's outer beauty. I think that outer beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and beautiful means aesthetically pleasing to another person. I do think that I am aesthetically pleasing to other people. So in that sense, yes, I think I'm beautiful. On the inside, do I think that I am kind and loving and people first? Most of the time, yes. I do think that I'm beautiful inside, usually. But if I'm looking at beauty as, am I as thin as the average celebrity? Like, I do still see beauty as like what they told us in the 90s, like 90 to 100 pounds, size 0 to size 2. Like, I still have that definition in my head of what beautiful is. And if that is the definition that you're working off of, then no, I don't think I'm beautiful. And this led into like a much larger conversation, but it's like, sure, I might be crazy, but I just want to be clear so that we're not walking away from the conversation with completely opposite ideas of what was said and what was discussed. The hard conversation of the week is going to be a little bit different. So if you're new here, I try to do a segment every week where I talk about a hard conversation that I've had in hopes that it will inspire you guys to go out and have hard conversations with people if you need to. So this week, I really didn't have a hard conversation. So I guess it was more a hard conversation like with myself. Well, I did have it with a friend, but it wasn't like, it was more he was talking me through something that I needed to do rather than like a conflict. So that's what I would say. Typically, it's a conflict resolution thing where usually it could be breaking up with a friend. It could be sharing something with my boss or somebody at work that I'm like uncomfortable doing. It could be like a manager to a direct report conversation that needs to be had that's negative in nature. That's what I usually do, one of those. But so basically the hard conversation this week was that a friend of mine was having a birthday dinner and I didn't want to go. So I reached out to Cameron and I was like, help me with some excuses to not go to this dinner because I have to leave my house in 45 minutes to get there on time. And I really don't want to go. And he was like, you waited too long. You have to go. Like, there's no way that you back out of this and she doesn't hate you. You have to go. And I got mad at him because I was like, I don't want to go. and I should not have to go. I don't want to suffer through this. Like, I just was like, I wasn't in a good mood, like had a headache, my back was hurting, and it's like I have to drive 45 minutes to get there. I have to pay for parking. It's a very expensive restaurant. Like, I had this whole list of reasons of why I didn't want to go, and I just was not in the mood, and I wanted to stay on my couch in my blanket. But then I was thinking about my birthday trip and how upset I was that these girls agreed to come on my trip and didn't spend time with me. And I was very, very upset, and I was very hurt. And I was like, why would you agree to come on this trip and not hang out with me? And I have had a birthday dinner. A few years ago, I had a birthday dinner that friends told me they were coming to, and then they didn't show up. And it was a restaurant that doesn't seat you until the whole party is there. So I'm standing there with my sister and my one friend that did show up, texting the 3 people who said they were going to come, like, and they're not responding. And we stood there for 30 minutes waiting for them before they finally texted and were like, oh, sorry, we're not coming. And it was like, well, great. Now we stood here starving for 30 minutes. We could have been sat and eating if you would have just had the courtesy to tell us you weren't coming. So I was thinking, like, I'll be courteous and tell her I'm not coming so she can remove me from the reservation. But then I was like, I hadn't seen this friend in years. And so that was the other thing that was kind of like had me on the fence about going, as I was just like, we haven't even talked. Like, I've invited her to stuff and she hasn't come. She doesn't respond every time that I text. And I just kind of felt like the friendship was like fizzling. And I was like, why am I even being invited to this dinner? But in the end, like, I did feel like Cameron was right that I had waited too long to back out, and I thought that was unfair to do. And I also was like, if this was my dinner and people had committed to coming, I want them to show up, because I was very sad when I was standing at my birthday dinner and half the people that I had asked to come actually showed up. So I did go to the dinner, and it was a little awkward because I didn't know anyone else there but the birthday girl. And I felt like it was kind of hard to have conversation, but I felt good that I went in the end, because she was very grateful that all of us were there. Like, everyone that she invited showed up. She had a really good time. She like went around the table and like individually thanked each of us for being there and said like something sweet about our friendship and like why we were invited and how grateful she was that we were all there. And I thought that that was really, really nice. So I think at the end of the day, like, no, I did not have the best time, but it wasn't for me. It was for her. But I really did, like, I had that inner battle for like a good hour of like, oh no, I don't want to go. And that happens so much for, if anyone else out there is an introvert, like, people invite us and like, we want to be nice, and the thing sounds like a good idea at the time. And especially if you invite us like in advance, it's like we say yes in the moment, and then the day comes and it's like, oh no, I really don't want to do that. And that was part of my inner struggle, is I was like, I want to be kind. I want to be nice. I don't want anyone to see me as a flake or as rude or as the type of person who backs out of things last minute, or as the type of person who won't celebrate someone's birthday, especially when I make such a big deal out of my own. But at the same time, like, I really, really was not in the mood to like be around people, and I was not in like a good celebrating mood, like ready to have fun. And so I think like my hard conversation like internally was just like, which one of these sides is winning more? Like, can you rally for this other person? Or is this a situation where you need to just bow out because you can't do it? Which kind of goes back to the high functioning depression that I talked about in my last episode, which is like, I mean, yeah, I can always rally. I just usually don't want to. But I think that is just also something to notice about yourself, like when you're having these internal conversations. Like, it never bothers me if I have plans with somebody and they say, hey, I'm not feeling it, I want to stay in tonight. I'm like, great. Like, I'm the first one to put my pajamas back on and get on my couch. But if it's my birthday, I feel very differently. And I know that the girl who hosted this dinner feels the same way about her birthday as I do. Like, it's a very, very big deal, like really wants to celebrate, really wants to be surrounded by like people throwing glitter and having good wishes and hugs, and like just it's important to her. So that was why that won out for me. But had the birthday girl been somebody else that I had a less close relationship with, or who felt differently about birthdays, like it could have gone the other way. So I think that's the other thing, is like none of this is a one size fits all. Like there's going to be people that you click with and your conversation is easy. And there's going to be people that you don't click with that conversation is hard. And sometimes you're not going to want to put the work in to having the conversation. This is making me think of another example that I should move up to the previous segment, but I won't because I don't have the energy to do that. But same person that I was having the whole, like, your religion is important to you conversation with, like, this person one time said to me, like, hey, I'm not really in the headspace for this conversation right now. So like, if this gets hard, I'm going to just stop. And like, initially when he said that to me, I was so offended because I felt like he was saying that I'm hard to talk to, I'm difficult, I'm annoying, and essentially if I get on his nerves, he's not going to talk to me anymore. But after I got to know him better, I realized like that's not what he was saying. He wasn't saying anything about me at all. He was talking about himself. And he was saying like, I am literally not in a headspace to work hard. So like, if I am not understanding everything that you're saying, if I'm not feeling like quick-witted, like all my responses are just rolling off the tongue, like if I have to work too hard at being in the conversation, I'm not going to do it because I'm not mentally or emotionally in a place that I can put that work in right now. And so now that I like know that about him and I know that that's what he means, I like really, really respect it. And I actually love being told that because I am like, thank you. It's kind of the same as like, I have a friend that he will sit and make eye contact and like, he'll stare at me for like 10 minutes while I tell a story. And then he'll be like, I wasn't listening. Say that again. And sometimes I will repeat myself. Sometimes I'll get pissed off at him and be like, well, since you weren't listening, you don't care, and I'm not going to tell you. But either way, I totally respect that he doesn't pretend to listen. Like, he straight up is very honest about like, I zoned out. Like, sorry. If it was really important, please say it again. If you don't care that I heard it, know that I didn't hear it. But some people, if somebody were to react that way, would get really pissed off and be like, you're not my friend. You don't care about me. You don't want to talk to me. I'm out of here. So again, it's all like ebb and flow and give and take. And you have to evaluate in each of your conversations and in each of your friendships, like, is this something that you want to put the effort into? And the other person gets to evaluate that as well. So maybe the conversation is a lot of work for you that you're willing to put in, but maybe it's a lot of work for the other person and they're not willing to put it in, so they stop talking to you. And in most cases, people are not out here saying like, hey, you make a lot of assumptions when we talk and you're always mad at me and I'm always having to explain myself and it's really difficult, so I don't want to pursue this friendship anymore. Like, most people aren't doing that. Most people, when they're having the experience, all they know is that conversations with you are consistently frustrating or stressful and they don't like feeling that way, so they just ghost because they don't have the tools and the words to have the conversation. So even if you gain the tools and the words to have the conversation, you still have to understand that not everybody has them. And so even if you're giving it to people, you're not always going to get it back. And then you just have to evaluate, like, are you okay with that? Is that something that you can live with? And sometimes you're going to lose friends and it's going to be really hard, but the world is going to keep spinning and life will continue. Movie and TV recommendation time, you guys. I've seen so much in the past month. First of all, I have made it to season 19 of Grey's Anatomy, and it's finally good again. 14 and 15 were my absolute favorites. 16, 17, and 18 were absolute trash, and I quit many times, and they took me a long time to get through because they were so bad. But season 19, things have turned back around. I'm very excited to continue and to finally catch up with present day in season 20. I'm hoping to be there in a week. I'm so excited. Okay, movies that I've seen recently. There was, what's Ryan Gosling's new movie called? The Fall Guy. It's a lot of fun. It's too long, The balance between like comedy and serious is not great. A lot of the scenes are too long. Emily Blunt really has no purpose. Her role could have been played by anyone. But the action is 11 out of 10, and Ryan Gosling is pure perfection. So if you're like me and you're going to see everything that he's in forever, you will enjoy it a lot. The Idea of You on Prime Video. Love Anne Hathaway, love Nick Galitzine. They're obsessed with them forever. Cutest movie. First hour of the movie is the cutest movie ever. After that, I didn't like it. It was one of those like so you guys know the cinematic structure of like, you know, there's the exposition telling you like setting up the story, and then there's an inciting incident that like throws your main character into whatever's happening, and then there's the rising action, there's the climax, there's the falling action, and the resolution. So the climax of The Idea of You happens like right at the halfway point of the movie, and the falling action is like an hour long, and then the resolution is like 5 minutes. So I more just felt like we had all of this like build up to something great. And of course, like if you know the story, you're like, all right, we're waiting for like the thing that makes this relationship not work. And then that happens, and then the fallout from that just keeps going and going and going and going. And it just goes from like a cute rom-com to like very sad. And then you get to be like, you're like, okay, I've been sad for an hour. So is this not a rom-com? Like, I don't quite know what's going on. I just feel like the execution of the second half could have used a lot of improvement, but still really enjoyed it. And I'm trying to think, I know there's like something else that I saw, but you know what? Whenever I remember it, let me save it for next week, because I don't know if I'm going to see anything before I record the next one. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful for you guys in your conversations and your relationships. Feel free to let me know. You can text me or email me at realhonestpod@gmail.com. Yeah, I didn't do a goals check-in today because I have not worked on my book since the last time I talked about it, which I think was 4 or 5 episodes ago, which I think was 2.5 months ago. So yeah, I'm going to go try to write my book right now, and then you can ask me next week if I actually did it. Okay, bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, love's already above you. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, you, me and you, let's keep it real honest.